This is the Literacy Mindset Podcast, where education leaders discuss identifying and removing phonological barriers with Mindplay's CEO, Jeff Pendleton.
Okay, well, welcome back, everyone, to Literacy Mindset. Really excited to have my guest today, Mr. Larry Brunson Jr., Director of Special Education at Victor Valley Union High School District in Victorville, California. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Well, of course, really excited to dive in on some of the interesting things that you have going over in Victorville. Maybe first orient us a little bit to you and your career and your pathway to the seat that you're in today.
All right. So I have been in education for 26 years now, and actually started off as an instructional assistant 26 years ago, and moved on from there. Wanted to continue my career as a teacher. So I was a general ed teacher. I taught first and second grade. Then I moved over into special education, where I pretty much taught at the elementary, middle school, and high school level. And then from there went into administration as a program specialist, assistant principal. And then from there, became a director. And so I've been a director since 2011. And I've been a director of both special education and student services. And then just prior to COVID, I decided that I needed a little bit of a break from K-12. I had been in it for 20 years. And so decided to step away. And so for 4 years, I was the director of student accessibility services for a community college in the Inland Empire here in California. And then 2 years ago, decided to step back into K-12. And that's how I landed here at Victor Valley Union High School District. And our district is very interesting. We are up in the high desert. And we have approximately 11,300 students who are currently enrolled with us. We have 9 schools, and most of our population is on the lower socioeconomic side. We have a lot of, very rural areas where, you have dirt roads the students are walking on to get to school, very interesting pathways to get to school every day. So we have a very sort of unique, structure here in our district.
Okay. No, that's great context to kind of help people understand that. Also, it's a Union High School District, right? So
yes.
7th through 12th?
7th through 12, yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And some people may say, what are we doing talking about literacy in 7th through 12? Isn't that a K2, K3 thing? I love that you have the experience that you have, because you've basically spanned the gamut, pre-K through 15, 16, right? So talk to us just a little bit about some of the things that you've seen over the course of your career as it relates to unique needs at different grade levels and literacy development. Clearly, there's some emphasis on the younger grades, but then things that happen in older grades that you've seen that we were talking about. So maybe walk us through some of that.
Absolutely. So one of the things that I have seen, especially being in this role, is there's a huge focus on literacy, I would say, from about K to 3. And having been at the elementary level myself, I was able to kind of see that firsthand. And then what happens is that once students get to 4th grade and beyond, it's almost kind of like, well, if they don't have it yet, they may not, ever get it. And then what happens is when they come to us as 7th graders, we see it on full display. So for example, we have 3 middle schools in our district that are 7, 8. And this year, our 7th graders were coming in, and many of them were anywhere between a 1st and 3rd grade reading level. And so, that presents with a host of challenges, which is why in our district, we have several different areas of focus. Literacy is actually one of our areas of focus for that very reason. Also focus on results. Our superintendent is very big on results, as well as a focus on equity. So literacy is a big focus just overall for us. And so we deal with that, in a variety of ways. Just in my department, we provide lots of professional development, to our teachers. And so, when I came on board, our teachers had shared with me, Larry, we don't really have professional development here. And I said, well, we're going to have to change that. So I had a one-on-one meeting with my superintendent, who also has a background in special education, which is very rare for a superintendent to have a background in special education. And I want to highlight that because he was one of the reasons why I decided to come to this district, because I've never had a superintendent with such an extensive background. And so he's been very supportive. And so he said, well, what's the problem? And I said, well, I was told that, we have a problem with getting subs. And he said, no, that's not true. You need to move forward with that. So I created what I call job alike collaboratives. So essentially what that is that we have our different groups of special ed teachers. So we have our SAI teachers, or for people out there who know it to be RSP, it's the same thing. It's just the state changed those names back in 2012. And then you have your specialized academic instruction intensive. So for your students that need more intensive support. And then you have your SAI classes for students who have emotional behavioral disorders. And then you have your class for those students who have more extensive needs, more of your moderate to severe population. So we put those teachers in those groups, and then we invite them to come to these job alike collaboratives. Last year, we did it twice. So we had to have 6 different meetings to accommodate each one of the different groups. And then this year we did it 3 times. So, for a total of 9. And so that was, so over this last two years, we have had 15, job alike collaboratives. And this year the focus has been on a huge focus on literacy and essential standards. And the reason why is because, again, our district focus is around focus on results, essential standards, and literacy. So I thought that would be a great way. And so what we decided to do was create a partnership with our colleagues in curriculum and instruction. And so they were coming in for a portion of that day to provide professional development around essential standards. So really showing teachers, not only are these standards essential that our students are going to be assessed on when it comes time for state testing, it's also important for you to know how these standards relate to each other. So we went all the way back to, elementary level to show teachers how these standards in literacy are weaving through the different grade spans, and how our students really need to understand that content. And if we don't get it, for example, in 7th grade, one of the standards is stating claims, and I think it comes back up again in 10th grade. And so really understanding that if they don't grasp it there, we have another opportunity to sort of weave that in later on. And we have just found those partnerships to be incredibly powerful for our teachers.
Yeah, that's excellent. And understanding the nuance between, how you can work together with a curriculum department versus just kind of going out and doing your own thing. I'm sure you could get into that. Have they been receptive? Is it an easy thing, or are there particular things that, curriculum typically does it their way, and they're not sure how to individualize it as much as maybe you need in the special education side?
You know what? I have been incredibly blessed in our district. Our curriculum instruction colleagues are absolutely amazing. One of them was a special ed teacher a very long time ago, so she has some understanding, but they have been amazing. So we sit down with them before our job alike collaboratives, and we sort of plan with them what is it that our teachers need? How do we need to sort of bring it to their level? We also need to ensure that we have opportunities for teachers to be able to sort of play with the information, if you will. So putting them in groups, allowing them to have the conversations, because I really feel like that's where the real learning and sustainability comes from, is having that built-in collaboration. So they have been absolutely wonderful to work with. As a matter of fact, I just sent them an email a couple of days ago thanking them because we finished with our job alikes for this year and we'll start them again next school year. And I sent out a series of emails just thanking people because it's very it's very hard work. It's a lot of work to sort of coordinate and put all this together. And so you're talking about two different departments. You're talking about curriculum instruction and special education. And oftentimes, and I think you kind of alluded to this earlier, oftentimes you do run into challenges because you have, and you often hear of it as the special ed side of the house and the general ed side of the house. Right. And sometimes, there's not alignment in those houses. And so we're very fortunate here to have that alignment. Everyone wants to see our teachers win, our students win. So whatever training we have to go to then bring back to them, we will do that. But we've been very fortunate to have colleagues who are very like-minded, on the same page with us. We sit down, we plan out everything. We anticipate any questions or any challenges that the teachers may bring to us so that we can have answers. And I think that's another thing that our teachers really appreciate is that we always have answers. But that's because of the planning that takes place. And I'm just a planner by nature. So that collaboration just really works for me. I think also the fact that I have such a strong background in instruction also helps with that collaboration. And then my coordinator also has a very strong background in instruction. So that just really helped us come together with our curriculum instruction colleagues in a very powerful and meaningful way because we have an understanding. Lots of people who are in special education, they understand the compliance aspects of it. They may understand the legal aspects, but they don't always have a strong instructional background on both the general ed side of the house and the special ed side of the house. And I feel very fortunate in my career that I was a general ed teacher and taught first and second grade, which are, first grade is, critical, and is the foundational, place for literacy. And so I've been able to take that with me throughout my career from, the preschool level all the way up through higher education and just sharing, my experiences and my knowledge around that literacy. But I just can't stress enough how fortunate we are to have such great colleagues in curriculum instruction who really care about the work that we're doing. We really care about the work that they're doing because they weren't able to really there were some shifts in the district and they weren't really able to provide a lot of professional development on the general ed side of the house. So they were very grateful because we were pulling them in with us. And so they were able to kind of come in and provide that professional development that they've been wanting. And then the great thing about it is that because we've sort of pioneered this back into our district, now I believe they are going to be doing some things next year on their side of the house around, literacy and essential standards as well. So, I was happy that our collaboration has led to, more widespread learning for all of our teachers.
Yeah, that makes sense. And does that manifest itself at all in decision-making frameworks? For example, curricular decisions. Oftentimes that comes out of a curriculum department, of course, but how do you make sure that students with IEPs and under your care are covered in the type of curriculum needs that might be unique to that? Do you guys collaborate on that front, or is there just a healthy respect of boundaries? Kind of what does that look like when you have such a collaborative spirit?
So they do have our curriculum and instruction colleagues do have a curriculum instruction meeting or a collaborative every month, and my coordinator attends those meetings. So she attends, and then I believe the coordinator who's also over at student services, she attends those meetings as well. So they do include us, and our coordinators do attend and they come back, and report to us as directors, sort of the things that are going on. But then in addition to that, we have a directors meeting. So in our division of Ed Services, there are 5 of us. So there's me as the director of special education. We have a director of student services, a director of curriculum instruction, a director of college and career technical education, and then our IT director. So we meet bi-weekly, and those things that are happening in those meetings are also shared with the other directors so that they understand, where we're going in terms of, any decisions around curriculum, any decisions about software, since we have, IT as a part of our division, they have to be a part of those decisions as well. So just the format in which all of our meetings are sort of set up, they're set up in a collaborative nature. So that way it's not like, oh, well, we're curriculum instruction. We made the decision to, do this, and you guys just need to figure it out. Cause I've worked in districts like that where it's like they decide and then, you kind of have to get in where you fit in, if you fit at all. But that has not been my experience here. It's just been, very collaborative. They do include us. They want to hear, our input. And not only have we worked together with the job alikes, but, recently in California, a few years ago, they created an alternative diploma pathway for our students who have more moderate to severe needs, because before they would just give those students a certificate of completion, and those students were not able to access certain financial aid. They weren't able to go to certain colleges with that. They weren't able to go to the military. So a group of parents, went to the state and really advocated to have sort of this alternative diploma that students would be able to use to be able to go to college, get financial aid, go into the military. And also, and I said all that to say, that was also a collaborative effort between us and curriculum instruction, because we had to create new course codes around that. And so we had to work with them. And so they had to make sure that those course codes were there, making sure that the level of rigor is there in those courses so those students can get credit and get that alternative diploma. So we worked really, really closely with our colleagues over in curriculum instruction, because they were the ones coming up with the course titles, the course codes, and working with our teachers to make sure that, everything was above board for our students. So just all the way around, we have been working very closely with them. We're doing some work with literacy and ethnic studies and a few other projects, and they always include us, which is, fantastic, because it just benefits our students and it benefits us as colleagues, because there are certain things I go in and I'm learning, and then, they're learning from us. And so we're all just kind of learning from each other. And then you can see that it's almost like this magic that happens. And then you see that, and then you see this enthusiasm from all of us, that we take that and we bring that back to our teachers, and our teachers get all excited and they take that back to our students. So I'm a huge proponent of collaboration and, PLCs and things of that nature. And so this collaborative spirit that we made a choice, because you have to make a choice to be this way. And so we've made a choice to be this way and to work together this way. And it just has, tons and tons of benefits for everyone all the way around.
Yeah, I think that's a great example for those listening of how you can foster it. And maybe not everyone has the same instructional background and assets that you're bringing to the table, but I think you outlined a number of strategies there that give people something to go on. Okay, let's talk about individual students for a minute. You mentioned that a number of 7th graders coming in reading at somewhere between a 1st and 3rd grade level. Have you found there to be a common thread as to maybe a specific deficit that causes that? Is it lack of exposure? Is it a discrete foundational skill that tends to drive that? What in your experience have you sort of come to the conclusion of what the common theme is on 7th, 8th graders that might be reading at a 1st, 2nd grade level?
Well, from my experience, what I can say is that what I found, and I'll talk in terms of pre-COVID versus post-COVID, because there's there are certainly
There's a
differences
difference.
in that as
There is a
well.
difference. You're right.
So pre-COVID, what I found, even when I was in the classroom and then even when I became an administrator, is oftentimes students would struggle with the idea of learning, phonics and, really learning the reason why certain words sound a certain way and being able to read fluently and being able to blend. And I think that what happens is that you bring this curriculum in, and sometimes teachers are not always thoroughly trained, or they may go to, one training in the fall and one training in the spring. And in that, it's like a sit and get. You're sitting there and you're just getting, this information. And I've been to a number of them, and there's not always time where you get to actually interact with your colleagues and really kind of dive in and ask, the important questions and really be able to navigate through things. And then, teachers are expected to then come back to schools and, roll these things out. Also, another important component to any implementation is, bringing people in who know those programs to be able to come in and watch and observe. And then, one of the things that I had the pleasure of when I started my teaching career in the Long Beach Unified School District, so many years ago now, we would have like instructional coaches that would come into our classrooms and they would observe like whole lessons. And then the students would leave, and then we would have full on conversations about, what was happening. And I think that's one of the components now that is missing is, teachers need to be able to have those conversations, walk through, different situations that they're dealing with in real time. Not talking about, some example or some case study, but like, no, I have, this student, these are the struggles that they're having. Can you help give me some strategies? I was very fortunate to have that. And so I think that's why I was a very strong, teacher in the classroom, and literacy was something that I've always been, a proponent of and always been strong in, and have a bachelor's degree in journalism and, a master's in special ed and, with an emphasis in curriculum instruction. So, those things are very important to me. So I always wanted to, go to the workshops and the conferences and be developed. But that's not everybody's, sort of passion. So you have to build in those systems and structures to really support teachers. And I think with, different budget cuts and things like that, we've kind of gotten away from that. So you give the teachers this information and then you expect them to go out and just kind of do it. And then when it doesn't go over well, it's like, who do they go to troubleshoot and to brainstorm. So that was sort of what it was, sort of pre-COVID. Now going into post-COVID, now you're dealing with, trying to implement, this curriculum. You're trying to implement literacy strategies, but then you're also dealing with mental health concerns. You're dealing with behavior. I can't speak for other, schools in our country, but I know in California, a lot of our districts, and I'll just be perfectly honest, the whole distance learning was not, it just didn't do what it was supposed to do.
Right.
And then I think the way in which students were brought back into schools, it was almost like they were herded back in like cattle, and no one really took the time to think about. And I always challenge my staff who have these types of concerns, go back and think about your 10-year-old self, your 11-year-old self, your 15-year-old self. Imagine showing up to school on March 12th and then on March 13th being told, because I think that was March 13th of 2020 when everything sort of happened. Imagine showing up to school on March 13th and being told, you're going to be at home for a year and a half. Because of this virus. And for a lot of our students, school is the safe space, space. It's a safe space, for them to learn. It's a safe space for them to have a meal. Some of our students, this is the only time they're going to have a meal is the school lunch. And so to take people out of that environment, and then you're putting them in homes where all manner of things, were occurring. I mean, people were posting videos all over social media. You would see, the student on their computer trying to listen to the teacher. Meanwhile, families are in the background yelling and throwing things around, and people are running back and forth. It's just not conducive,
Right.
to learning. Also, a lot of students weren't really motivated in that environment. And I can speak for my own children. I have 4 children, and I was frequently walking into my kids' rooms and going, "You need to get out of your bed." Like, they were literally holding the computer up like this in the bed. And it's like, "You need to get out of your bed. You have a desk. I bought you all desks for this reason. Please get up." And you just don't know how frequently I had to go and do that. Get up,
So good.
get in your day. And so, then when they were brought back into school, and I know even my own children would say, like, they just kind of brought us back in just to kind of start us where we left off. And there's a lot that wasn't, covered. And, they referred to it as learning loss. And, that's when they started creating all of the, expanded learning opportunity programs and, things of that nature. So now I think teachers are having to contend with more mental health issues that they're not equipped to deal with. And then they're also dealing with more extreme behavioral issues because, students were there in their homes for a year and a half. They got comfortable with just kind of sitting around, getting on the computer when they wanted to. And then now you're bringing them back in. And what I feel really should have happened is that there should have been more of an easing back into school and more of a focus on the mental health component, as opposed to, you left here when you were in 8th grade. Now you're a 10th grader. And now we're just going to start right up from 10th grade standards.
Here we go. Time to go.
And it just doesn't. And that's why all those provisions had to be put in place. Like, they were giving like pass and fail grades, for like the next year or two, to contend with, students' grades were dropping significantly because of how everything was done. So I think now what we're seeing are the effects of post-COVID and our sort of inability to really meet students where they are. So it doesn't surprise me that now, working in our district, having students come in as 7th graders and they're reading at a 1st grade or 2nd grade or 3rd grade level, it's not surprising to me, because of all that has occurred. It just tells me we have a lot more work to do in a very short period of time, because they're going to be here from 7th to 12th, and then they're expected to go off in the world. So we've got to really hone in and get them at least some of these skills that they're going to need to be able to navigate if they're going to go to the military. They still need literacy if they're going to go to the military. If they're going to go to community college, they need that. If they're going to go to university, they need it. Even if they're going to go to a trade school, or even if they're going into a career, they're going to need those skills. So we have to find ways to do that.
No, that's excellent. And I do like the distinction there of pre-COVID, post-COVID. Well, we could talk forever about this stuff. This has been awesome to kind of talk through it. Let's maybe end with a final question about where this goes, the future. We have the mental health challenges that you see today and its impact on literacy. What do you see 5 to 10 years from now? Do you see that improving? Do you see some of that staying the same? Just kind of give us the Larry crystal ball view into the future.
Well, without getting, too political, we all know what's going on, in our political climate right now, and the the threats to dismantle the Department of Education. And so I would say, if things continue to go the way that they're going, we're going to see some major changes in public K through 12 schools. There's a lot of efforts right now to sort of privatize education. So, and I'll say we're seeing it here now in Victorville. We have a lot of charter schools around here that have popped up in recent years, and we have seen a little bit of a decline in our enrollment, and that's where students are going. I think the reason for that, and I also have a background. I've also worked in charter schools, so I kind of, I know how they work and how you have to navigate there. And I think what needs to happen, if I had sort of a wish, I think what needs to happen is charter schools, regular district public schools really need to come together is what needs to happen. And there needs to be a lot more collaboration on that front. I think what happens is it's like, oh, we're the charter school. We offer this, we have that. This is our stuff. We don't really interface with or deal with the public school district. And then the public school districts are the same. It's like, well, we have our stuff, you guys are over there. We're not, interfacing. And I really feel like collaboration needs to take place between the two, because if not, you're going to have more and more parents that are going to be pulling their students out for more specialized options. Whereas I feel like public school districts can also have those things. Just, sometimes it's on a bigger, scale than what it would be in a charter school. But I really feel like the two entities, especially moving forward the next couple of years here, are really going to need to work together, so that you don't have, this disproportionate amount of students who are in districts versus the many students who are in, these charters and these specialized, types of schools. That's kind of where I see things are going, and just hope that there is that collaboration there, because otherwise we're going to lose, a lot of students. And I don't really feel like that has to be the path. We can come together. We can work together, exchange ideas and create just this dynamic, education system where, students have their choices, but, districts can still be a viable option, as well as, charter schools and private schools as well.
That's great. What a vision of collaboration. I think that's been the theme of our conversation today, Larry, collaboration. And you've been a great example in what you've been doing. Thank you so much for taking time and spending it with me today, and hope to catch up again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love to hear from you. Learn how we help students by identifying and removing phonological barriers at mindplay.com.